back
That's what
down in
I'd
truth.
like you to do right now, if you could just take the next few minutes, and I'd like you to speak to somebody who's been infected with this virus. They're trying the best they can. They're exhausted. They're social justice warriors. They bought the ideology, and you can't win a debate when somebody has adopted this as a religion. So I'd like you to just speak to that person, and then those that have been affected, family members, to give people hope. And what would you say to somebody who's in the mindset knowing you can't win a debate, but you're touching on so many things right now? I'd like you to just really develop that with the compassion that you have. What would you say to these people that are just totally in the bondage of this ideology that's taken over their lives?
Right. Well, there's two parts. You said, how would I speak to someone who's in the ideology and who sees the world, this worldview first, and then from the view of someone who's trying to speak to someone who is in that ideology. So if you are, I don't know, if you consider yourself, I guess, someone who champions social justice, if you consider yourself someone who's extremely left-leaning politically, if all of these sorts of things are your worldview now, I encourage, I guess, first just taking a deep breath and getting out of your feelings for a second, because the heart is extremely fickle and emotions are very, very fickle. And it's often a reactivity and reactive nature that is causing a lot of these things. And generally speaking, these types of reactive things, whether it's in a relationship, I mean, think if you're having a fight with someone or you're having a discussion, what you say in the moment, in the heat of the moment, is almost always terrible, and you usually have to go back and apologize for it. Thoughtful, sober thinking is so important in every relationship, in every business decision, whether you're at work, how do you act at work? How do you think of the most important things in your life? And would you just go off on a whim, on emotion, or would you put a little bit of extra thought and really take a moment to be conscientious about it? I think that's something that we've got to start there. Take a deep breath, back off the emotion for a bit, and consider that maybe your end goal, whatever you want, whether it's peace and harmony, whether it's help for the poor, whether it's, equality, whatever it is, how are we actually going to get there? So that's the first thing, is to get away from just the angry reactivity or the sense of overwhelm. I think a lot of people are very sort of empathetic, or even they might call themselves empathic, where they just take on the hurts of others and they're overwhelmed and they see the pain and suffering, and that's all that they're seeing. And then they're fed these headlines in the media about all this oppression stuff, right? It's overwhelming, and it's like you're in chains. You have to shut the TV off, you have to take a moment, and you have to breathe. From there, it's a matter of not demonizing and turning everybody that disagrees with you into a monster. If you do that, you're already shut down to the idea that maybe that person might actually have the solution. What if the person you're speaking to has a really good idea on how to help that group of people, or how to solve this particular problem, whether environmental, racial, whatever it is? What if that person had a great idea and you just shut them down because you see them as far right or bigoted, or they listen to this news podcast, or they're a part of this political organization and those people are, quote, far right? And like you get these ideas in your head, you demonize someone. But what if that person has the answer? Are you in it for the ideology, or are you in it for the actual solutions that you claim to be seeking? Because if you're looking for solutions, there's a good chance you might not have it. There's a good chance it might be a combination of your skills and your ideas and somebody else's. It's how it is in business. It's how it is in relationships. Compromising, discussing, hashing things out, being logical, as well as, I always say, balance your head, balance your heart, and balance your gut. What is your intuition telling you? Are you getting red flags? Don't ignore those and push them away just because something sounds nice. Dig deeper, that's something I would encourage people. Now, it depends. If you're talking to an activist, I'm going to be honest, this kind of touches on your second portion of the question. It's very hard to get to someone who is all in. It's going to take something and someone to shatter their worldview or hit them in a moment where they are kind of vulnerable. And for me, it was unexpected. It was, for me, it was, I call it a time-released red pill. It took multiple things that made me say, whoa, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't sit right with me. And it started with even just feelings. It doesn't feel right. Something's off about this. I don't feel like that's the answer to this problem. this doesn't seem like it's going to get us anywhere. I don't think that's who I am. I know who I am. And what you're saying, that doesn't ring true. There's something that has to be true and grounded in everybody. And you have to try to reach that part of them. And you have to accept, if you're talking to someone like this, that you might not be the person that gets them to that point. And you just have to pray and hope that something or someone does. My big thing was a 13-minute video by Jordan Peterson discussing victim mentality and privilege and all of these concepts. And there was something about that just nailed me. And I remember just bawling and being, eyes wide open. And from there, it just shifted me into being open to listening to other people. But it was truth and love. It was hard truth for me that woke me up. It wasn't someone being caustic and horrible and throwing out buzzwords. I go online and I see the debates people have, and I cringe, because if right-wingers think they're going to win the hearts of these people by insulting them and using buzzwords, like, good luck. You're never going to get anywhere.
Never, right.
Try to figure out, if they're demonizing you as a monster, you're demonizing them as an idiot. That's not better. If you talk down to people and are condescending, you're not getting anywhere. There has to be common goals and the idea of solutions and what we're actually seeking to achieve. But it has to be said with truth and conviction. I realized, it took a long time. You can't beat around the bush and try to go in the middle ground. You do have to speak truth. You have to say something and mean it and believe it and stand by it. But you can find compromise in how you get there. You can find compromise in how you see the person and treating them with dignity and respect and having actual full-on discussions. But it's only possible as much as the person is willing to listen. They have to be able to let their guard down. And I think that's different for everybody. So I do have hope that people can change, because I see it all around me. I mean, I met Gracie through this. I've met other wonderful people that were so much further in it than I was, and that are completely out of it now. It is absolutely possible. If you're a Christian, it is possible to obviously always believe in redemption and grace, and pray. Just pray constantly, because God can use anybody or anything to change a person's heart. It can be the most ridiculous thing, a movie scene, a song, a moment on the side of the street. You just don't know what's going to be that moment where someone says, whoa, this isn't right. I don't feel good about it. It can be one headline, realizing that the media lying to you is important. If you can actually show someone that they've been lied to and they can't refute it, then you start to question other media headlines. You start to question other sources. It can be one little thing, and it has to be kind of earth-shattering. And unfortunately, that's very different for every person. It depends how deep they are into it. It depends what their beliefs are. And everyone has a passion. So you have to be able to speak to, okay, this person's really, really big on this race stuff. How do I try to see where they're coming from? I mean, it does take a lot of thought exercises, and you're going to have to listen to some of the stuff that maybe you just don't agree with and might even nauseate you, but you have to understand what people, it's a language. These people are speaking a different language. Learn the language and see if maybe you can find a way to explain, hey, I want the same things you do. I care about this too, but we don't see this the same way. So why don't we discuss, like, how do you think we're going to get there? Because I don't think this method's working, and I think we're actually getting further away. I think that we're actually harming those people or hurting those people that you're so concerned about. It does come down to intention and finding out what that person's intention is and trying to meet them in that space somehow. So,
yeah, but the leftists that are really in it, they don't care about intention. It's an impact, that's,
yeah.
And we do speak the same language, but we have a different dictionary. And it's,
true.
We live in parallel universes, like where we get our information from. It's, even though we're all in the same similar geographic locations, what some people get for information is completely opposite of what somebody else gets. And there's so many challenges. Do you feel like this, it's going to get progressively worse and worse, and more control, more authoritarianism, more harshness, or you see this virus running its course, kind of like the COVID virus, where it just dissipates and goes away? Or where are we as a society, do you feel?
That's a tricky one, and I don't want to be the black pillar here, because I'm trying to speak hope and truth, because I do believe that individual souls, individual hearts and minds can be changed and saved. Absolutely. I don't know that we're going to get a lot better until we get worse, and I don't know where this is all going. I mean, it could be, as you said, it's all peters. I mean, I think the end game of stuff like this is it's good. It has to peter out because it's unsustainable. Most of what we're doing is unsustainable, and it's going to crash and burn in one way or another. The question is, how bad does it have to get before that happens, and will we shift? And what worries me is that the tech side of it, the media side of it, as you said, how people get their information, that part is getting really divided and really polarized and really intense. And then you have places like Canada, where we now have actual policies and bills in place that actively censor information and are actively pushing to get hate speech laws brought in, and those sorts of things. And of course, hate speech being defined by the government, which is terrifying, because how do you define hate? Well, half of what I've said on this podcast is hate, and it's not hate, right? So but it's considered so by this standard of a lot of this legislation.
What hate is? Who's
precisely? Yeah, precisely. And that's what worries me. How do you? It's very subjective, and when you have people that they depend on votes and their power and their money. You want to talk about oppression? Politicians get power and money based on getting people to vote for them and keep them in. So they're the ones that get to decide how this works. I'm not sure why we're all so trusting. I wish that the left and the right could both just come together in a mutual distrust of the government would be nice. Because back when I was a lefty, part of my thing was, I don't feel I've changed that much, ironically. I didn't trust the government then, and I don't trust the government now. Yeah. My problem was I started to trust the people that sounded nice. That was I was weak in that way. I even voted for Justin Trudeau in 2015, which is an embarrassing admittance, but he was saying the right things, and he was supposed to care and whatever. So I don't see it getting better, in the sense that the media is very polarized. And as you said, we do live in parallel universes. They're different worlds that, one event, we had that big trucker convoy in Canada. That was a great example. One person literally saw it as a terrorist takeover of our capital, an insurrection of violent far-right extremists. The other side saw it as just a bunch of everyday people wanting to get rid of these mandates and go back to work, and standing against this sort of division, and hot tubs and bouncy castles and people singing "Oh Canada" and playing hockey on the streets. Like, it was two, depending which media outlet you followed, there was two completely different things happening. But what actually happened, how many people actually went there and saw it. And so it's very, very hard to disseminate that when you have this kind of polarization in media. As a Christian, I have to, of course, bring it back to the faith part of this, because that's shifted my view too. Are we in the end times? Is this the time when Jesus comes back? I don't know. I think there's an opportunity for change here, and that we could have some sort of major reset, not the world great reset stuff that people talk about with the WEF, but I mean an actual reset of common sense, because I do think all these ideologies will reach their logical conclusion, which is just a dumpster fire, and then something has to be rebuilt from that dumpster fire. But we're dangerously close to just evil sort of taking over on a lot of these fronts. A lot of this stuff isn't, and this is where, I'm hesitant to say that you can pull everybody out of this ideology, because there's just a lot of darkness there, and a lot of people are in chains to it, right? And there's a lot of powers that be that are making money and that are powerful because of these ideologies. I mean, if you turn everybody against each other, who benefits from that, right? So I do worry that we're not, I worry especially for my country. I think the States always has hope, because you have a constitution and you have some pretty feisty individual states with a lot more individual governing power, and people there that will stand up and fight. But I have very little hope right now for my country, and actually it's kind of depressing. I have hope in Christ. I have hope in Christ, because I don't see how we're going to get out of this with voting. I don't see a lot of political options here. I don't see a lot of people standing up and caring. Most people are complacent. We're comfortable. Nobody, as long as there's not actively bombs going off in your neighborhood, people think everything is fine. And yet, meanwhile, we're just shifting and shifting. And I worry very much about places like Canada, really progressive places. I don't know. I wish I knew. All I know is that right now I'm focused on individual souls, because if I look at the big picture, it kind of scares me.
That makes sense. I'm in agreement with you. It's like drip, 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 and then you reach the tipping point and there's no return. Or do we continue to, and I love your attitude, because, people can find God and live in faith, even if we were to go very far left or socialist, or we lose a lot of the freedoms that we've enjoyed in both countries, we could still find God, and He's a an anchor to our souls, and so that's our hope. I mean, we can't. And this discussion is even. I mean, it's political, obviously, but in the end, your hope is not in a political party or a governmental system, and neither is mine. In the end, it's, can we trust God, and can we serve Him? And I think ultimately that's our individual responsibility.